Welcome back to the show. Many thanks for staying with us. So let's talk about education and standards. Let's talk about quality and how it is overseen. So there's a National Inspectorate Board. I don't know if you knew about it. It's an agency under the Ghana Education Service, and they are supposed to see to standards, quality in our schools, in our educational system. I'm here on the post today to share insights on how the future of Ghana's human capital development is being assured. She's the acting executive secretary of the National Inspectorate Board, Dr. Hilda Hager Ampadu. I just want to be sure, you're welcome by the way, I just want to be sure, is it Hager or Haga?
Hager.
Hager, okay. Hager Ampadu, she is the new head of the National Inspectorate Board. So what is this really about and what should we expect? She's here to tell us all. You're welcome.
Thank you.
So for those who didn't know about the National Inspectorate Board, tell us, educate us.
So the National Inspectorate Board is an agency under the Ministry of Education, one of the 22 agencies. And our mandate is to set and enforce standards that are to be observed in pre-tertiary educational institutions. By pre-tertiary educational institutions, we mean from kindergarten to senior high school, including technical vocational education institutes.
Okay. So how on earth does one organization like that monitor all these schools or all these educational facilities across the country?
So currently our mandate says that we should inspect each school once every 3 years, which in itself is not feasible. So what we have adopted is to use what we call a statistical sampling approach. So we select schools that are representative of the school population in the country and we inspect them. Using that approach, this academic year we are inspecting 2,381 schools. Once we collect data on that, we are able to make decisions on how schools are performing across the country. Okay. So that's how we're able to reach all the schools.
So help us understand a bit more. When you say you're checking the standards, what does it really entail? Does it entail performance? Because you mentioned performance. Does it entail performance of the students in the school, or does it entail, say, the quality of the facility, the quality of teachers, the quality of the material they're studying?
So the quality of the facilities itself, the quality of teaching, the quality of learning. Now, how do we assess the quality of teaching per se? We do what we call lesson observation of teaching. The National Teaching Council, which owns the National Teaching Standard, has a standard that every teacher has to teach by. We inspect that. Are the teachers teaching according to the National Teaching Standard? So we sit in a class, usually English, Maths and Science, and we observe the act of teaching and we rate the school based on that. So that's how we observe teaching. And also learning. Are the students learning? So during lesson observation, we are looking at the students. Are they following what the teacher is teaching? Do they appear to understand what is going on? When the teacher gives tasks, are they enthusiastic? Do they want to answer the questions? Do they appear to understand what the teacher is teaching in the classroom? We assess all that in a period and then give a
This sounds very interesting. You know why I say it sounds interesting? Because I remember when I was in primary school that any time that I think their circuit supervisors or something would come around, we know. And on that day, our performance is different. On that day, our teachers are nicer. On that day, our teachers, they teach in a way we haven't seen them teach before. How do you ensure that in your checks, you're not only meeting dramatized classes?
That's a very good question. So the way we mitigate against that is to ensure that schools do not know that we are coming. So we select a region that we are going to inspect. We'll let the regional director of education know, because sometimes even how to locate the school becomes a problem. But we don't let the school know that we are coming. Okay. So we just show up on a day, on a typical school day at 8 a.m. If the school starts at 8 a.m., we are there. We interview the school leadership to understand how the school is running, and then we go ahead with our inspection. So the way to mitigate that is to not let the school know ahead of time that we are coming, so they don't put up a show for us.
And this is private or public schools only?
Private and public schools. All schools in Ghana.
All schools in Ghana.
All schools.
That's a huge area to cover.
It is.
What have you found? What's your assessment so far of the quality standards as far as our education is concerned since you started work?
So I started work about 7 months ago, and then we hadn't implemented what we call a digitized approach to inspection. So we could only then inspect a few schools. Now with the new approach, we are able to do more. In the last academic term, 2019-2020 first term, we were able to inspect 448 schools. That data has been analyzed, and a report will come out very soon of our findings from those schools. So this new approach, which is quite new to everybody, but what we are hoping going forward is it will be institutionalized, and our reports will be released every term and annually. So you will hear more from us.
Okay, how soon should we hear from the NIB?
We're thinking the first academic termly report should come out next week. So we are hoping that when it comes out, we'll engage with the media, we'll publish it on our website of the findings so that schools can use them as learnings to improve upon learning outcomes.
So I understand that you also, part of your mandate is also to register schools. Explain that a bit. How does that work, and how does that end up, improving standards in our schools?
So when we do our inspections, we do it for performance for the schools to see if they are performing. But the registration looks at facilities, resources. So if you cite a school in a certain environment, do you have the right facilities? Do you have a library? Having a library alone is not enough. Is it stocked with the right books that the students will need? How is your classroom size? Do you have a playing field? Do you have fire safety information?
Do those things work in Ghana?
They do work in Ghana, surprisingly.
To what extent?
To a large extent.
I mean, if you take 10 schools, let's focus on public schools, 10 public schools, how many of them would have all these things that you've mentioned, which I believe are the standard?
Yes,
right?
These are the standards. How many public schools will have a playing field and a classroom?
No, classroom, you talk about classroom size.
Yes.
You talk about the people in the classroom, for example.
So currently, as to the student-teacher ratio, what it should be, we are now working on what it should be. But if you take a typical public school, do they have a classroom that students set to learn? We've heard of schools that do not have, and we have schools that have. So some schools have, some schools do not have. As I said, we just started the registration of schools in November 2019.
Okay.
This is what we plan to enforce to make sure that schools have adequate facilities for the children to learn in a safe environment. So it's something that is key on our agenda for 2020 that we are working on.
Do you have any plans for schools under trees?
Well, schools under trees do not fall under my mandate.
They don't?
But we can make a recommendation to Ghana Education Service.
So personally, what do you think of that phenomenon? I mean, I know people who know several others. I know people who have traveled to several others. What do you think personally, if it's not part of your mandate? I would have thought that it should be a part of the mandate.
It is a part of my mandate, but it's not my mandate to establish schools. That's what I meant.
Okay.
So for school establishment is mandate of GS if it's a public school, and the public if it's a private school. Now, schools under trees, what do I think? Should schools be cited under trees? No, they shouldn't be cited under trees. But what I know is that most of the communities that have these schools, usually there's no school in close proximity, and some of the citizens themselves will get together to, in the absence of anything, at least get their children together to learn somewhere. Now, when that comes to the notice of us, we inform the right people. There are actually private schools that are also under trees. It's not just public schools.
No, I mean, that's fine.
So
bottom line, it is not a good condition for anybody to study in.
No.
So I'm just curious to find out if perhaps it was part of your plan. But so when you go to assess these schools, in your assessment, have you had any of these schools falling under the pool of schools that you wanted to look at? I mean, the areas that you wanted to look at, have you had any of them studying under trees?
So far, we haven't encountered any, but we've only done registration of about 600 schools. We just started late this January. Okay. So I'm sure with time we'll find. But we found out that there are schools here in Greater Accra that are sited in people's kitchens and living rooms. And so those are equally like schools under trees. Schools should be sited in an environment where children can feel safe and learn. Okay. So we are the standard setting organization responsible for school establishment. We are going to make sure that schools are sited in the right places. Okay.
Well, schools are sited in the right places. I'm hoping that your recommendations to the authorities would be able to trigger the necessary interventions, because I mean it does get tiring. We know the problems, we keep talking about them, but anyway, this is not perhaps the time. Let me just take your thoughts on the recent scandals that we've had in our schools, especially the senior high schools. Ejisumayan Senior High School is the latest. I'm sure that you've heard it. You are a woman, and I'm sure that you probably have your own thoughts about this. A lot of people have their own description of the girls, etc. What do you think, first of all?
So I've not only heard it, it's also part of our mandate as a National Inspectorate Board. It's called safeguarding, making sure children are learning in an environment where they feel safe and protected. Safety and protection falls under that. So what have we done about it? When it was brought to my attention, I paneled a team of inspectors to go to the school to understand what is exactly happening. They finished their work yesterday, so I'm hoping to get a report sent to me of exactly what happened. What are we doing? We are using incidences like that, pulling a few together to make a policy to share with the school owners on what they should do in times like this. So it's something that's key on my to-do list, to see into how do we prevent this from happening. One of the key things we've identified is that there's a gap in data literacy when it comes to students to understand what they are supposed to do with this equipment and technology that that is available to them. So there's so many interventions we want to put in place. We want to bring stakeholders together to discuss these interventions and implement them.
Have the people who went to Ejusman given you any preliminary information, what they found? I mean, I know you said they finished their work yesterday, but they must have given you an idea of how this situation actually looks like.
So from the preliminary information they've given me, it appears the ladies in question had a visitor come into the school and brought a phone, and they used it to do a video, and their intention was to delete the video before the visitor goes. And the visitor, unfortunately, disappeared with the videos on the phone, and that's how it got leaked, from what I've been told. Now, they were the opinion that they were debarred from coming to the school, even though they were just debarred from going to the boarding school. So my inspectors have advised school leadership that they need to be attending classes at least, whilst they wait to go through their own disciplinary procedures. So they will start going to school tomorrow to attend classes, and not just lose out, because they have a month to their SSE. So every time lost is important time for them to get prepared for their exams. So
I'm supposed to wrap up this conversation, but there's something that's very close to my heart. You talked about it, safeguarding. When I was studying in the UK, I went to do volunteer work in a school. And one of the I went through a rigorous process. I come here to Ghana. I mean, before I left, I knew, but it just, the shock, the differences just came up to me. It doesn't mean that we don't have a safeguarding policy. Because it's the first thing. When you get to, the first thing they take you through, give you a very detailed policy and make you understand the limits that you have as a teacher or as an adult with kids. Do we not have? So
we have, but it's not defined. So currently, that's what we are doing. We are defining the policy to share with school leadership, and everybody who is involved with a school child will be trained on that. So it's good that you mentioned the UK's, which is run by Ofsted.
Yeah.
We want to have similar here, where everybody will be aware of what the policies are in terms of safeguarding of children in schools.
Okay, I hope we will get there. We certainly should get there. But it's been exciting. Congratulations on this new position. We hope that you will succeed at it, and that the standards with schools will improve by the time you have to hand over, if you have to.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. So I've been talking to Dr. Hilda Hager Ampedu. She is the Acting Executive Secretary of the National Inspectorate Board. Their job is essentially to make sure that they uphold standards in our schools, they uphold quality of education, the quality of teaching and learning. And she says she's on that. She's spoken a bit about, in discipline in our schools, referring to the Jusman girls. There's going to be a comprehensive report, I believe, but she's giving us an idea what really went on. Thank you very much for coming once again, Hilda.